Welcome to another episode of eCommerce Australia. This week we're joined by Mike Halligan. Very lucky to have Mike on this episode. He's got such an awesome background in both the fashion and apparel space, working with brands like Xanarobe and The Fifth. I think you've even built an app there at some point by the looks of things, and now building a great e-commerce subscription business with scratch, so which we'll sort of talk about in this episode. But mate, firstly, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to learning, mate. You've got such a great background in e-com and, I guess fashion, as I sort of touched on. But maybe let's start with scratch and how did that sort of idea come about? Were you working in fashion and just thought it's not quite my calling, or did you see an opportunity in that sort of growing pet market, or how did that come around initially?
Yeah, a few things kind of came together at the same time. So I had spent a few years kind of running marketing or running some of the digital stuff for a group of fashion brands, there was three businesses all under the one kind of roof. So I was able to kind of learn a bunch there. Then I went into Fifth with one of the regional kind of D2C watch brands, and was there for about a year. And that was kind of at the time where D2C was really changing, where Facebook CPMs were really dramatically rising. Instagram was getting cluey to all the little feed hacks where people would somehow game the system and take over the explore page and get hyper growth, and seemingly businesses would $10 million businesses would kind of pop up overnight. That was kind of like starting to dry up, and they were kind of maturing as a business and going through all the challenges of that. And so I was there as general manager to help, I guess, settle things down, steer the ship, provide some provide like a plan for us, like a second life, beyond that hyper growth Instagram era. Yep. And then I guess while that was happening, I was kind of recovering from both of those kind of eras. The two jobs, I was recovering from starting my own business probably 3 or 4 years prior to that. It took a lot of energy. You mentioned it was an app called Bodywise. It was in the health fitness space. It took a lot of my energy, a bit of my money, and it sort of like burnt me out a little bit. So I kind of, during the Fifth era, I guess I got that energy back, and I was had in the back of my mind thinking, okay, I feel like I'm ready to start my own thing now. I've got great experience. I've learned through some really interesting industries and through some great people. But dog food was the last thing I thought I'd be into. But unfortunately, I had two sick dogs, I guess, towards the end of my time there. So I was there for a year. Towards the end of that time, I guess I had two sick dogs, two Cocker Spaniels, Brandy and Sasha. And they were both sick, well before when they should have been sick. And so dog health, dog nutrition was kind of on my mind a lot more. And like looking around and, both kind of unrelated, I was thinking, I'm ready to start a business. I think I've got the space now. And at the same time thinking, okay, I need to sort out my dog's health. What's going on here? Looking at food, and thinking, hey, what's going on here? I don't trust any of these brands. So I was kind of that consumer that I ended up building scratch for, someone who jumped online, wanted to research everything, looked at food the same way I looked at my own food, trying to look at the nutrition, trying to look at quantities of ingredients, whether they are whole foods, whether they are not, and then ended up sort of like going down this rabbit hole of how the pet food industry worked, and learned that it was unregulated, and a lot of the food was just really, really crap, and the Mars and Nestle owned majority of the industry. Kind of pissed me off enough while I had these sick dogs to think, okay, I'm going to quit my job and give it a crack. So yeah, made the big call and kind of just absolutely sunk my teeth into it.
Yeah, fantastic. That's brilliant. And I guess there'd be a fair few lessons that you learned whilst building or helping assist those other brands, within their growth spaces that you could apply to scratch. What was the first sort of 12 months like for you in that sort of initial startup phase? What sort of things did you have to do? Did you take pre-orders? How did you sort of get your first few orders going?
Yeah, well, probably the biggest thing was like working out how to make dog food. Not being from a dog food background at all. So I knew that there was a better business model out there of D2C. because it is the perfect industry to make a better product. Like a lot of subscription, a lot of D2C is just a rebadged, you know, version of something that's 2% different, nicer design, nicer website, nicer branding. And that's it. But dog food is one of those things because it's super heavy. It's retail dominated where there's like really big margins at retail and a lot of discounting going on and all these things. And it's not very clear. It's very confusing for the consumer just because of the vaguity of claims. So D2C allowed, I guess, me to cut through, to spend a lot more money on the ingredients and to sort of add more value back into the product, as well as having a good brand that spoke to, people who are researching dog food, properly, or getting a dog for the first time and wanting something that spoke to them and allowed them to research the way that a consumer would. So I guess the business model was, kind of like set early on. Like I guess I quit my job thinking, okay, there's got to be a brand that, I could go D2C and make a better product. But how the hell do I start that? So a lot of the first year was really just, understanding the actual manufacturing side and the recipe side of the industry, how to take my good intentions actually into a better product. And then I got really lucky. Probably about 4 or 5 months in, I was introduced to my now business partner, Doug, and he was kind of one of the top guys in the pet food industry, but he was literally just cracking it and about to quit, having worked in there for 8 years. Because so he was making a lot of the products for the big brands, like they would go to him, and he would kind of make the product, but then ultimately what he's saying here's what we can make, and what actually ended up in the shelves once spreadsheets and accountants and
Yeah.
I guess the scale of food you're making at that just huge end. He would just see these things ultimately not being good for dogs and ultimately not being good for a consumer too. So he was about to quit. Ended up getting him at the right time. After 2 beers, he helped me join the company
Only
and
two
start the company.
beers.
And then yeah, I know it was easy.
Just cheap drunk.
Yeah, I know, right? I guess, yeah, just caught him at the absolute perfect time where he was fed up with how the industry was working, and we set about starting scratch. And then a lot of that, the rest of that first year was essentially, like working out packaging formats and stuff like that. We didn't want it to be a product that looked like dog food. We wanted to, to be able to put it on a Facebook ad, to put it on a website for anyone to see it, and for it to feel a level different. That it wasn't just dry food in a different color bag or whatever it might be. Again, the website. So we worked on the packaging format, worked on logistics around that. Obviously, a lot on recipe development, and then we kind of went out. We got our first customers by really kind of like finding people who really associated with like lack of trust in the pet food industry. And just wanting transparency, because there was a lot of people out there who sadly had sick dogs because mainstream dog food was making them really sick. And so there was Facebook groups and that kind of thing for people who were like not trusting of big pet food and wanting regulation. And
So
then at that, while we were
how
going,
did you, sorry to interrupt, but just on that point before I forget, before we go away from it, how did you identify or get in touch? So you've sort of identified a bit of a target market there. How did you find those people that had that pain point? As you sort of said, Facebook groups, was that the main sort of area? Or was there any other ways that you could sort of specifically target those people?
that was definitely the main one. And then we created content to help them more easily share that with other people. So we had this like interactive quiz, like a landing page where we'd ask a bunch of questions. And it was almost like a setup of like, do you think the dog food, that it would be legal for a brand to only have 5% of the meat they're putting in the front of the cover? Of the bag, and people would go, no, that can't be legal, and they'll be like, no, wait, it is legal, and people go, what? This is outrageous, and share it around a
Yeah.
little bit more. So we went to this small group and then helped them spread out, I guess, what they cared about and what we cared about, because Scratch was really born from not trusting big pet food and being frustrated with the inability of people to be able to actually see, go to a pet food store, sit, look at the back of 10 bags and be able to see what's healthy. You couldn't do that. So we found people who felt the same way and just made it easy for them to share what they felt.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And so was that quiz that you've now got on your website? And as I mentioned to you, I guess off air. Yeah, I've taken that quiz. It's a brilliant quiz. Really, really like it's just a great customer experience. So congrats on that. But was that quiz part of your initial
Thank you.
kind of strategy, or did that kind of come about as a way to kind of get more and more people sort of top of the funnel through and educate them at the same time, gamify it a little bit? Like, was a quiz big part of your strategy early, or was it something that you just sort of built as you went?
Well, I think the quiz you see today is sort of that was like day one once we were selling that went up, and so that's almost like our onboarding really. Prior to this, I mean, we probably did 3 months worth of marketing before before day one, before we even launched, and so that was like more about the industry problem, and we were just saying basically we had a landing page say, hey, we're Scratch, we're starting a new breed of honest dog food. It's going to be this, this, and this, like a few key kind of like product kind of selling points. Take our quiz to see how the industry operates and why we're trying to fix it. And so that was the only thing you'd get from scratch for the first 3 months. We did create like a few fake homepages, and run some Facebook ads to kind of see what hooks resonated. And we've done lots of surveying of dog owners to see how much they actually cared. Like, do most people think their dog food's no good? Are they ready to change brand? Are they super loyal? How often do they change? So we try to understand those habits. But what you see now, it's actually been pretty steady since day one of the business in kind of late 2018. So that onboarding quiz hasn't changed all that much, funnily enough.
Yep.
But it's one of those things that like the data shows that, hey, it works really well. So we're sort of scared to tinker with it too much.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. All right, so I guess getting into more of the e-commerce side of things, what's the sort of first metric you look at each morning?
I guess yesterday's signups. So I don't look at revenue. I've got like three speeds that we sort of look at data. So one's just daily, and that's just yesterday's signups. Weekly, that might be what products are moving, particularly like upsells or whatever, if there's a particular focus of the business. And then monthly is revenue. So I don't look at revenue any more frequently than really monthly.
Yeah. Okay. And so that then that X amount of sign-ups kind of equates to, how the month's going anyway.
Yeah, I mean we're a pure subscription business at scratch. So
Okay.
a lot of our data is super constant. We don't really waver too much in terms of churn or anything like that. Like we don't, as I'm sure we'll get into, like we don't really have big variances in where we're acquiring customers from and do massive discounts and have different behavior. Everything's pretty predictable as to, and it all starts from how many customers we get in. So kind of makes running the business pretty simple in many respects. But
Yeah.
leaves me only to kind of worry about that one figure, I guess, day and night.
Yeah. And so with that quiz that we were talking about and that journey, have you seen that has affected your conversion rate in a positive sense or a negative sense? Do you see a certain amount of drop off, halfway through the quiz? Do you then go and refine that, or what is that sort of? Interested to sort of learn about the quiz. I love scorecard marketing and all that kind of thing as well. So for me, like it's a bit of a passion as well to kind of learn, what you're seeing in terms of that quiz, how many people complete it, and what the conversion rate looks like.
Yeah, I guess a little bit different. I mean, most of the dog food kind of startups sort of kind of followed us since. We'll do some sort of variation of this where it is like essentially an onboarding where we ask your dog's name, their breed, their age, their growth stage, their body shape, their activity level, and then over the last few years we've added any health conditions they've got to, as we've kind of got more recipes, we can kind of tailor what recipe suits them or say if nothing suits their dog. So we gather all that information, and once it basically, so that first question is, hey, what's your dog's name? And once you fill that part out, 97% of people get the whole way through the onboarding. So there's a little drop off at the start where people are just like, wanting to click around and stuff like that. But if they actually engage with the quiz, 97% of people make their way through to checkout. And so that has basically been steady the whole time. We've added a few extra questions around any health issues, and that hasn't changed either. Because I think people, once they get there, and our whole kind of like new user experience is built around this personalization for their dog, and people love talking about their dogs. And they also want, if they're going through the process of looking at a brand like Scratch, they want to feed them well, and so they're happy to volunteer a bit of information. It's only really on the occasional Facebook ad where we see like a comment like, hey, why can't you just let me like jump to a cart and check out straight away. Why do I have to give you all this information? But we might only get that like once a month. We're got tens of thousands of dogs on Scratch.
Yeah, and there's plenty of angry people on Facebook and Instagram are quite willing to give their comments as well. Yeah, brilliant. And so with that, then, does that then, without wanting to give away your secrets, but does that then put them into certain segmentations and flows that you can then personalize information to them going forward, and then also secondary or even primarily help you with your sort of product research and developing new products based on conditions? What are sort of commonalities within the quiz results?
Yeah, so we used it in a bunch of different ways. One, to, I guess, personalize the checkout experience to hopefully maximize the conversion rate and get people trying Scratch for their dogs. So once you get there, we'll use that to have told you what recipe we think is best for your dogs. And if there are any recipes that we don't think we wouldn't recommend for your dogs based on all the information you've given. So I guess we try to take sort of the guesswork out of shopping and feeding your dog by saying, hey, this, with everything you've said, this is what we think is best for your dog. They would eat this much a day and get X amount of calories from Scratch. You can change that if you want. And because it is a subscription, I mean, none of our subscriptions right from the day one, they've all been variable. So I might, I've got my puppy sleeping in the hallway next to me. He gets a box of Scratch every 34 days. But, my neighbours, Jack Russell, they might get a box every 78 days. So it's down to the day based on the information. So we use that to essentially set up the subscription. And for you to just go, yeah, that sounds good to me. They've told me what I need to do and why it, matters. And then hopefully they check out.
Yeah,
So I guess we'll personalize what product we're suggesting and what other options we might suggest. We'll also personalize, if they've got a puppy or not. We have like a starter pack for puppies, which is less food because, we sell 8 kilos of dog food at a time. And for a little puppy, that could last ages. Or, for someone who's unsure about whether it's the right food for their dog, could just seem like a big jump to spend, $80 on a new brand. So we'll personalize how we package up our product. Also, got the reviews on the page will be personalized to how other people, have found Scratch working for them in a similar situation. So whether you've got skin issues, whether you've got a puppy, whether you've got a large breed dog, a bunch of that stuff might be personalized. And then any email funnels that we do after that as well, which we do have a email opt-in if people kind of like want to save a feeding plan going forward. Because, a lot of people, dog food is one of those things that you might hear about Scratch and go, oh, Scratch, it sounds amazing. I'm convinced that Scratch is the best thing for my dog. But if you've got 4 weeks of dog food left, because you used to buy in bulk, you might not check out then or then and there. So email funnel actually, for a business like us that you don't really make an impulse purchase, email funnel is actually like a really big part of what we do.
yeah, brilliant. And are you with Klaviyo with your emails?
We do them through Campaign Monitor, but like we pass a lot of, I guess, custom detail back
Yeah,
and segment them out pretty well.
yeah, brilliant. And all right, so I'm just going to jump a couple of questions. Sorry, mate. Um, what all right, how much emphasis do you put on different marketing strategies? So, SEO versus paid versus email. How are you finding sort of customer acquisition at the moment? And what's been a bit of a champion for you guys, and what's an area that perhaps hasn't worked as well now as perhaps it did when 4 or 5 years ago, pre-pandemic?
Oh, it's a good question. It changes so much. So we're, Scratch is 4.5 years old now. What we're doing now compared to early days is very different. We've also tried a bunch of stuff that we look back and go, okay, that hasn't worked. At one point we hired, Vice's editor, the editor of Vice Australia, and had like this media arm for, wanting to create a sort of media publication and social community for people who love dogs. So that we thought if Facebook became too expensive or didn't work as a channel, we'd sort of have our own community and be able to like learn much more quickly and launch more products into that community and whatnot. We found building the media arm really, really hard. So that probably only lasted about a year and a half. Still provides some traffic for us, but no longer something we invest any kind of time or money in. Then we moved, I guess, to, I guess through that and then and then even post it. Like we put a lot of time on SEO. We tried to get some of the world's best specialists to help us with SEO. And what we've really found, like these days, we're not really doing any SEO work because just the amount of paid advertising that is happening in our category. A lot of shopping, whether it's shopping searches like puppy food or education searches like benefits of grain-free dog food. There's so much advertising, and we see there's big search terms, 5,000, 10,000 plus searches a month that we rank organically top few for, and we might get under 100 clicks, and we're one of the top ranking on a major search term. So, the amount of paid ads like they absolutely dominate that category. So we've kind of just kind of said, okay, let's put our attention elsewhere. We have put a little bit more into AdWords ourselves, and more into email funnels and things like that. I think we didn't really run Facebook ads for the first 2 years. We actually, I don't know, looking back, it was probably a bit stupid. We were probably a bit arrogant, but we thought, okay, we'll probably get a head start. Like dry dog food is a hard thing to make. It's a hard thing to spin up a great new brand, but it's a really hard thing to make new dog food. There's only so much capacity in the industry. Most of the manufacturers will only want to work with people who know what they're doing. So I was lucky to have my business partner, Doug, who had a relationship with, a lot of the industry already, and we could actually get going. But we thought, okay, it's going to be a few years until we have a decent competitor. Let's learn the hard things. So that's why we tried to do this media arm instead of worrying about Facebook ads. We didn't really raise much money at all and sort of bootstrap the business along and tried to, build a really sustainable base from the get-go. And so about 2 years in, maybe just a bit before COVID, we started experimenting with paid ads, and that's probably still our biggest driver of sales. We do see even, organic and direct sales that, if we advertise less on Facebook, they'll really dip with it. So it's been our biggest one. But I think we've kept trying to challenge ourselves to not rely on paid and to be remarkable, to do things that were worth talking about in PR, that are worth customers sharing, that are worth, like, put us a smile on people's faces. And that's not always easy. It's always, hard to do the things that don't scale, but we've continually, I guess, tried to challenge ourselves and do that. And, if I look at probably the 5 biggest days we've ever had, they're all PR moments. They're all big things that we've done, or, or some media promotion we've got for just all the hard work we're doing under the surface, often related to a stunt or something talkable. But so I think they're really hard to get right. They're really hard to predict. They're really hard to nail, but PR is kind of like a big part of what we do too. And just being remarkable, whether that helps in social, whether that helps in conversion rate, you don't realize it, or whether it helps in getting PR, and having other marketers love you and talk about you. Yep. We've got a big belief in kind of just like, I don't know, just good creative and good ideas and fun business.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that's the right industry to be in as well. I love the fact that you use the word remarkable, because that's my new digital agency is called Remarkable Digital. So
no
you've given me a nice little plug there. But interesting, there's a few interesting points there that I just want to sort of go back over. But so what I'm sort of finding as well with some of my clients is, I think the statistic is around 64% of SEO now is zero click. And you look at any sort of search engine results page that's dominated by ads, right? So it's interesting to see that aligns with your efforts, and that perhaps, your SEO, you're not getting quite as much bang for your buck in an e-com sense as perhaps you probably were 4 or 5 years ago, just by the design of the page. And there's a few other options. I guess that's kind of interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating. Like if you asked me 5 years ago, showed where we rank on a bunch of search terms, I'd be like, oh, our business is made. We are like, we're golden. We'll never have to do any paid marketing in our lives. And, I sit here and going, SEO is near useless to me. Like it all adds up, but it's, an absolute fraction of what I thought we would be, like the business result would be getting for the, how we rank on key term.
Interesting. And then also, how do you sort of run paid advertising? So like Google Shopping, you sort of mentioned that you're basically 100% subscription. So then how do you run Google Shopping campaigns for that subscription, or are you running more display ads, or um, yeah, how do you navigate that?
It's tricky as subscription because Google hates subscription businesses because they're not going back to AdWords all the time to make the sale. So
Yeah,
Google Shopping is something we've never really got anything out of. We are occasionally will be listed. We've been able to get listed in the last year and a half, but for the most of our life, they've refused to kind of accept our product listing because we're a subscription business, and that's against their terms. Somehow we snuck through, but it's not really a thing that you can't really control very well how many impressions you're getting, and we haven't probably focused much energy in trying to like own Google Shopping just because it feels like everything's stacked against us there as a subscription only business.
yeah,
We've thought about opening the brand up to be one-off purchase if you like, and subscription is optional. But I guess we're all complete, like everything from customer service, the whole customer experience is tailored around being a subscription business. I mean, it even goes to like how we finance the company, the type of people we have, how many people we've got on email marketing and acquisition versus retention, and customer service, and how we treat our customers, and whether we're willing to go above and beyond. If everyone's a subscriber and you've made a promise, to do the best thing by them and their dog in the long run, it makes it easier to kind of make short-term decisions that might seem, like ridiculous to send out new products, at your own cost and things like that. But the whole business is geared around being a subscription business. So, yeah, we haven't been able to make the most of Google Shopping. We don't really do much display. Um, and we do a fair bit of YouTube over the
yeah.
last probably 2 or so years. To varying, that probably wavers a lot more than other channels, depending on creative strength and I guess if we're in campaign mode, I guess with something new to say, or if we're just like always on. But YouTube's a pretty steady presence for our business.
Yeah, brilliant. Um, do you sort of create content like for YouTube? Do you have your own channel? Is that something that is consistent, or is it more so just sort of the pre-rolls and yeah, the display ads?
No, we haven't really done any organic content. We've done a little bit of stuff that, like you see up there, where if we've done like little videos as a social skit or something that we hope will work on ads, often we'll just post it in our YouTube channel just to give it a place to live on, because generally it's
Yeah,
pretty humor based and kind of hopefully worth watching. We've got a little bit of product education stuff on there, but that's mainly sits in our website, like most views would be in the website. So most of our YouTube work is pre-roll kind of stuff, a lot of true view campaigns.
um, yeah, awesome. Hey, one more question I had in terms of before I get onto subscription because that fascinates me and hopefully we don't go over time, but um, one of the things I'm keen to understand from your background with the fashion channels, with the fashion brands that you work with, and I guess having to report into, owners or shareholders, whatever that sort of situation is, to running your own business. Would you be able to have done the PR, as you mentioned, sort of those sorts of PR tactics that maybe are harder to track if it wasn't your own business? Like, how do you sort of, digital marketing is great because we can kind of track a lot of the metrics, but when you start to get into some of those PR stunts and things that may or may not work, it's can be a little bit harder to track. Do you feel like that's a competitive advantage because it's you and your business partner are running it, and just because you can't track it doesn't mean it's not valuable?
Yeah, it's a really good point and question because so much of it comes down to risk tolerance and trust. Like the marketing side of the business is kind of the area of responsibility that I primarily hold, and we've got a head of growth and we've got some head of creative and content people within our team, and like that what they're able to do if I don't trust them or if I'm not willing to allow them to take much risk, or if I want the brand to be safe, or if I'm worried about profit or breaking even or paying staff wages that week, would be very different than if I am, hopefully a somewhat like free, motivating kind of like give clear parameters, but a lot of trust in how they get there. So when that all comes down to what sort of relationship you've got with the business, how they see marketing, whether they see PR and as a thing that you found, that you went for once, and if you didn't get there, do we scrap that idea forever, or do they realize that, say, PR or things that are high value, unpredictable one-off moments that might take 10 attempts, 10, 9 bad ideas before you have every good idea. And so it all comes down to people and their attitude, I think, at the end of the day. And it's hard to get that within a company. Different companies have different things that got them to where they are, and a different playbook. The fifth brand was very, very much Facebook advertising and Instagram. So traditional brand building, top, building out non-performance sales, and not always trying to make a sale. Like trying to build consumer trust and kind of like create content that wasn't even trying to sell, that was just trying to keep them in an ecosystem that was unfamiliar to them, and so it wasn't embraced. Zainro was, really good at great photography, working with creators, making like a really good product education, really optimizing the website, always providing the best way to explain the product and highlight the type of people who wear the product. So that kind of stuff was really celebrated, and any ideas there. And then Scratch is different again. So every business kind of has its kind of like marketing culture of what's possible. I mean, you look at like a brand like Minor Figures, the weird, wacky shit that they do, that would just get like laughed out the door at like 99.9% of businesses, but it makes them incredible at what they do and makes them get attention and bat well above kind of the budget they've got to work with. And that's all just because of marketing culture.
What brand is that? Sorry, mate.
Minor Figures, they're an oat brand. It started by an Aussie guy in the UK, but they're in Australia too, and they do a lot of just wacky marketing, great outdoor stuff, great PR activations. Like they had one in Newtown, Sydney, last month, I think, where it was like a little cafe that you had to go up. They made a giant milk carton in their branding with a little stairwell up to get served a coffee in the second floor window of like an apartment or something. And so the barista would like put their hand out the second floor window with your coffee, and they had a line
Yeah,
around the
good.
block, and everyone was on social about it, and just little things like that. Like you imagine doing that, most businesses you get thrown out. Like we did a pop up dog park within a dog park last year in Melbourne. Got the spot in Edinburgh Gardens in Fitzroy, and we kind of did this massive area. We built like we did it for a month, so it was like a huge undertaking. We built like massive dog play areas. We had a big dog zone, a small dog zone. It's like swimming pools, ramps, tunnels, all sorts. We had like deck chairs for humans, and had like single dog owner nights, and like sausage fest night for Dachshunds, and like golden retriever days, and like all sorts of things going on. And like that kind of stuff is, in the end, we look back and go, that wasn't worth the effort. But it was like all the kind of things you have to do and try in order to eventually get a home run.
Yeah, just to stand out in a, as you say, in a competitive market as a, a challenger brand or a disruptor, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the world's so busy. Like
Um,
we, yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, I guess, with Facebook ads and stuff. Like, I actually did a bit of content on it yesterday, but a lot of the Facebook ads that I see are just so boring. Like everyone's so sort of trying to be so safe. And I feel like not many of them get the cut through. So if you can do something different, whether it be online or offline, then you're going to get that attention that you crave, and yeah, it'll either sort of work for you or not as well. But I guess you don't know if you don't try.
yeah, for sure. There's so much just copying that goes out there of like this seems to be working at the moment, or this seems somewhat fresh, and then a month later everyone's done it, and it's not. So it is hard to, I guess, zig when everyone's zagging or whatever the saying is, but it pays off.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And mate, with the subscription economy, I feel like a lot more brands are now taking up that the subscription business model. Um, where do you see that? Do you see that there's a long way to go in that subscription economy? Obviously, have you seen it become more trendy as you've joined? And do you think people like what are the satisfaction levels? Do you think that this is here to stay for a few years? Does it only work in certain markets? I guess it'd be good to understand your thoughts on the subscription economy that's sort of happening at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not that big on subscription businesses, which is funny. Scratch is Scratch is pure subscription right from day one through to now 4.5 years in. But I think like subscriptions are too often thought about from this is great for the business. More customers locked in and more loyalty and more repeat marketing. More repeat customers and everything like that. And not really thought of very much through like a customer lens of what's good value or how does the subscription represent? Does it represent anything above and beyond? Like scratch customer experience. If we only knew a small amount of data and you had to still run out of food and then go, oh crap, okay, I'm running out, I'll jump online or run down the store or whatever it might be. Like scratch would be a very different business. It'd be a very different customer proposition. It'd end up being different for the dog. And so, like you sort of like got to build more than just subscription as a billing cycle into the whole proposition, or subscription as as a base for you to do your operations and accounting off. Like it's got to represent a package of more benefits, some that might just be purely emotional to the customer. So I think there's a lot of crappy subscription businesses. I think unfortunately you've seen like a lot of those that have gone out of business in the last few months, just because if you're not doing it profitably at the moment, it's a really tough time for businesses. But so yeah, it's all about customer value, and too often it's just thought about through business owner, I guess, value, and it being this beautiful kind of set and forget kind of business. But it's a lot of hard work, and particularly it's a lot of hard work around customer experience and technology, and you got to make a lot of investments. You got to have a lot of people who have a lot of empathy for the customer, and got to have the ability to adjust your software. If you're on Shopify, it's hard to have a good subscription business, quite frankly.
Yeah.
In the long run, although it's getting better in that sense. So yeah, I'm not too sure about it. It'll always exist in some form because it's so easy to add a plugin that gives people like a save 10% to get on subscription kind of option. But for it to actually be a meaningful part of a business and a meaningful part of a customer's life, and actually something that helps drive a business forward rather than just being a billing cycle kind of decision, I think it looks very different.
Yeah, it's a brilliant answer. Probably a good segue to the next question I'll ask about customer experience and how much time you spend on that. But just from hearing your answer, I can kind of see why Scratch is kind of growing because, I felt that as I said to you, I don't even have a dog, but I was on the website and I thought, geez, everything's so personalized to me. Your dog's detailsy, and then you make a few different selections. And one thing I noticed about your business is just how customer centric it is without even me making a transaction or a purchase. So, credit to you on that. And a
Thank you.
good lead in, I guess, for this next question in how much of your time is spent with customer experience? Does it involve a lot of testing? And for listeners out there that are listening, how do they identify if they don't have a great customer experience, and what are some of the things that you've done to sort of test or improve that? So it's a long question, mate. I apologize.
Yeah. I think it all probably starts with customer service and what they're noticing and the types of questions they're getting, how much customer service volume they're getting. If they're getting lots of questions and if you're seeing a low bounce rate, a low conversion rate, high bounce rate kind of thing, there's a lot to say there that, hey, customers are finding buying harder than they should, or they're not buying at all, or they're not telling us why. But often, customer service will tell you what kind of things they're getting, and they are often things that can be sold. So I was the only person doing customer service for the first year and a half. So that every question that people had, everything that they were asking once they were actually signed up to the product too, and whether they want to stay with it, whether they want to, anything that they were feeling, I would find out. And I would call every customer 30 days after they joined as well and just check in, see how they were going, and get lots of feedback. So we built our customer experience around that, just like huge information gathering in that first year, and then tried to like streamline as much as possible so that people didn't feel the need to reach out, but also have like a tone of voice and a brand that felt like, hey, we want to hear from you if you've got a question, if you just want to show us a photo of your dog, if you're, like really unsure about your dog's history, with food and whether Scratch could help or whether it shouldn't, whether it couldn't, all those kind of things. So it's a mix of kind of like, it starts with a customer, then got put through, like we did a really big customer journey map where we not just, all right, how do we want people to interact with Scratch, but let's say in the next 6 months you want to get a puppy. where are you at right now? Like, what kind of things will you be going through between now and picking up your puppy, or your rescue dog? And then in the first 3 months, what does that look like for you? And then, as they mature and as you mature in, in life with them, what does that look like? When they get towards the end of life, what does that look like? And we're sort of like looked at, I guess, that whole life cycle of having a dog through a customer's eyes, and then how our website, how our email, how our customer service kind of would fit into that, and also how discovery, like how we would fit into discovery. Like for you, getting in that hypothetical scenario of you getting a dog in the next 6 months, we do some marketing things where we want you to be familiar with Scratch by the day that puppy gets there, and then hopefully get puppy food and you've heard about us and everything, all without going to a store. So the customer experience, the customer service side of things helps constantly fine tune and improve things. The more products you introduce, the more complexity you have in the business, the more you try to, like we might have someone saying, hey, we want to increase our upsell percentage. So you prioritize using a space to sell upsells instead of talking about reviews or just simplifying communication. You've got all these flow on effects from that. So customer service is always like our eyes and ears and how people are finding the whole experience. So it starts and ends with them, and then in the middle we just did a lot of user journey mapping.
Yep. Yeah, interesting. So do you, it's a general question, how do I ask this? Do you think that a lot of e-commerce brands don't talk to their customers enough? Do you think it's, I mean, from what I can understand and what you're saying, you exist to serve your customers, and that shows through in your humility, your brand language, the quiz, every touch point that Scratch has. Do you think, generally speaking, e-commerce brands try and keep a bit of a distance because they're e-com, and they don't ask enough questions, they don't know enough about their customers, or is that a too generalized comment?
I think some businesses, like it's all about your business model and what you're selling, and the repeat purchase rate or whatever. Like it doesn't make sense for someone selling gumboots, heading into winter, to spend anywhere near the amount of effort on retention and customer experience than what we do, because we're a product that hopefully you buy every month or 2 months or 3 months, and do so for 10 years. So like our business is centered, and our resources are centered around wanting to get someone in and making Scratch so good for their dog and for them that they never want to leave. And so much of our wage bill and our energy goes to being so good at retention and so good on our product that you'll never want to leave and feed your dog anything else. And that you'll tell other dog owners about us because you're so blown away with what the Scratch experience is like. If we were selling something, like dog leads or gumboots, in my example, that is far more of an impulse purchase and a one-off thing, or maybe you buy it every 2 or 3 years. Like our business would look very different, and we'd probably be a bit more traditional and spend all the money, like more people on email marketing, and always on acquisition and everything like that. So I think it is a little bit business dependent. Like, where's the incentive? And for us, the incentive, like, it's also, I think, about knowing what kind of business you want to be, how big you want to be. Because I think, like, my business partner Doug and I were really deliberate from the beginning and saying we don't want to be the biggest dog food business. That sounds awful. Like big business is a lot of stress. There's only so much. Like, we're very sustainably minded, and we're a B Corp, and there's only so much good ethical produce you can get at there anyway. So at some point we'd have to sacrifice our product and our values to become the biggest. So we were like, nah, we're good. There's a big enough business here. If we just great for our customers and we do good for their dogs, people will tell others about us, and we'll be able to pay our bills. And if we've got good retention and we know our margins, there's a good business here. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of allowed us to not try to do everything and to not put so much effort into acquisition all the time and stuff like that. Like most months, there's probably most months we won't even send an email, to our to new customers or to make a sale or anything like that. It's just all automated stuff.
Yeah.
So it's all tailored to the business model.
Yeah, interesting. Mate, two more questions before I let you go. Um, what role does social media or influencer marketing, have you done much in that space, and how have those results been?
We really haven't done much in the social space. Like I've had to hold people back from investing too much time in it. I've always viewed it as a not always. Like the fifth was built, and Zano, Barnacles, another brand under that umbrella. Like they were all built on great social media and great content. And dogs, there's so much dog content, but I think people care about cute dogs and viral moments on social media rather than dog health and those kind of serious topics that we can talk about. So I ultimately don't think there's much value for money, and even, like we don't have a specialist social media person. We're 4.5 years old. We've got someone I'm like, don't spend any more than 20% of your time on this. I know you want to, but like I don't think there's enough in it for us. So we've never done that. We've never worked with influencers, or we don't have an ambassador program or anything like that. But one thing we've found, like most of our followers are like dog accounts, so it's a very
Oh,
low
really?
engagement industry. It's like people have a dog account for their dog while they're a puppy, and then get bored of it when they're a little bit older and life moves on. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've got a kind of a love hate relationship with social media, and we don't really give it much time.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice one. And last question, mate, I guess, what does the next 12 months look like for Scratch? And then as a bit of a sub question to that, how do you see sort of e-commerce evolving over the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting space because there's not as much competition in a bunch of in many ways because a lot of businesses are, I guess, finding it hard right now. Many of the big advertising spenders have gone under. I mean, even just Milk Run going under probably like takes 10% of the online advertising audience out just with them alone. They were spending so much. But I think it's a really interesting space if you've got a a good business model. We certainly think there's good growth there for us, but I think our focus, like probably like a lot of companies, it's been hard to focus on product development over the last few years. Just supply chains have been so messy, and many of us have just been focused on being able to keep the lights on and keep sane ourselves. So even like the pandemic feels like ages ago. Like there's still a hangover of actually getting new products to market. So I think where next 12 months is just trying to like get back to making new products that just big improvements on what exists at the moment. So it's a real product development kind of era for us, and I think not just focusing on marketing and Facebook over COVID
Yeah.
and everything like that. So I think we've got a real good foundation. We've done a lot of work in our automation and our funnels and our tone of voice and keeping our brand evolving and always fresh and interesting that we can kind of go back into product for the next little bit. So watch this space.
Yeah, nice, mate. I really look forward to watching what you guys do. Obviously, I'm not your target market. I don't have a dog, but since sort of being introduced to you, yeah, I'm really impressed with the customer experience, the humility, the tone of voice, and just so sort of customer focused. That I'm sure that yeah, you'll continue to build a good business, and you get more and more subscribers going forward. So. Yeah, look, really appreciate your time, sharing your insights from ecom more generally speaking, and then how it relates to you guys and how our listening audience can apply that to their business as well. So, yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ryan. Really good to chat dogs and e-commerce with you, and all the best.
Thank you, mate.